Welcome to Liberty Voice USA, where truth stands firm against the tides of political spin, and where facts speak louder than politics. In a time when narratives dominate headlines and agendas shape the public's understanding of justice, we remain committed to unfiltered, fact-based storytelling. Tonight's report dives into a moment that is shaking the corridors of Washington. A single question, asked with piercing precision by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, that left even Justice Thomas visibly unsettled. It wasn't loud, it wasn't emotional, but it was powerful, and it exposed a tension that has been quietly simmering within America's highest court. It happened during a closed-door judiciary oversight session that few expected to make waves, but one question changed that. Representative Jasmine Crockett, known for her fearless cross-examinations and razor-sharp focus, leaned forward and asked Justice Thomas a question that, on the surface, sounded simple. Justice Thomas, when does accountability end and privilege begin for those who interpret the law? It was not a question designed for headlines. It was crafted for truth. Observers in the room described a moment of silence, the kind of silence that carries weight. Justice Thomas, a man who has weathered decades of public controversy, paused. His response was methodical, measured, but revealing. "Congresswoman," he said, "accountability belongs to us all, not just those in robes. Privilege begins when people forget that." But the moment didn't end there. Crockett, unwavering, pressed further. "Then tell me," she asked, "how do we reconcile your own silence on matters that have questioned your impartiality? If accountability belongs to all, where is yours?" The tension in that exchange echoes beyond the hearing room. It reverberates across a nation that has been questioning the ethical boundaries of the Supreme Court. For months, Justice Thomas has faced scrutiny over undisclosed gifts, luxurious trips, and financial ties that some argue compromise the public's trust in an institution once regarded as sacred ground for impartial justice. Crockett's question wasn't just directed at Thomas. It was aimed at the very foundation of judicial credibility. When public trust erodes, the question becomes not whether the law is still just, but whether it still belongs to the people. Thomas's defenders, many on the conservative front, argue that the justice has long been a target of political bias, that his originalist philosophy and steadfast conservatism make him an easy mark for critics seeking to delegitimize the court's authority. They claim his record stands on decades of principled legal reasoning, not personal misconduct. But others see a different picture, one where power and privilege have shielded those at the top from the same scrutiny faced by ordinary citizens. In that perspective, Crockett's question wasn't an attack, it was an awakening, an invitation for honesty from a justice whose voice has shaped decades of constitutional interpretation. But in the silence that followed, many were left wondering whether the truth she sought would ever come. In political circles, reactions have been divided. Progressive lawmakers applauded Crockett's courage, calling her line of questioning a masterclass in accountability. They argue that questioning power, especially judicial power, is not disrespect, but democracy in action. Meanwhile, conservative commentators condemned the exchange as grandstanding, labeling it a partisan spectacle designed to undermine the court. But what's undeniable is this: the question hit a nerve. And maybe that's what matters most. Because democracy, at its core, depends on discomfort, the kind that forces power to confront itself. Crockett's exchange with Thomas may not have produced a confession, but it produced something equally valuable: visibility.
It made the invisible tension of judicial privilege visible to every citizen paying attention. Justice Thomas, once viewed as the silent member of the court, now finds himself in a new spotlight, one not shaped by legal philosophy, but by moral inquiry. His past decisions on affirmative action, voting rights, and executive authority are now being revisited under the lens of credibility. And the question that lingers is no longer just about law, it's about trust. How do you restore trust in a system where those interpreting the Constitution appear to live above it? That's the question echoing across America tonight. Even among legal scholars, there's growing debate over whether the Supreme Court should be bound by a formal code of ethics, something that every other branch of government already abides by. For years, justices have operated under self-regulation, guided by personal conscience. But conscience, as history has shown, is not always enough. In that light, Crockett's confrontation becomes more than a viral moment. It becomes a reflection of where America stands, at a crossroads between blind reverence for institutions and the urgent demand for reform. As Justice Thomas's defenders rally to protect his reputation and his critics push for greater oversight, the American public is left watching two versions of accountability unfolding, one that shields power and one that seeks to redefine it. And somewhere between those two, the truth waits, silent but undeniable. When the nation's highest court loses public confidence, democracy itself begins to tremble. Because without trust, even the law becomes just another political weapon. Jasmine Crockett's question wasn't about left or right. It was about integrity, the invisible thread that holds democracy together. Her calm, deliberate tone cut through the noise of political polarization and reminded America that justice, in its truest form, must not only be fair, it must be seen as fair. And as the cameras switched off, those who witnessed the exchange said the weight in that room lingered long after. Some described it as a moment of courage, others as an overstep. But history will likely remember it something else entirely. A spark that reignited the national conversation on judicial ethics, privilege, and the fragile bond between power and the people. In the days that followed, both Crockett and Thomas became the subjects of fierce debate. Supporters of the Congresswoman praised her for daring to ask what millions of Americans have wondered. Critics accused her of politicizing the court. But beneath the noise, something profound shifted. The realization that questioning authority is not an act of defiance. It's the essence of democracy itself. Justice Thomas may have answered with restraint, but the real answer will not come from his words. It will come from how the Supreme Court chooses to respond to growing demands for transparency. Will it reform itself, or will it wait for history to force reform upon it? That is the question echoing tonight from Capitol Hill to every home that still believes in accountability. Because the truth is simple. Democracy cannot survive when trust dies in silence. And perhaps that's what Jasmine Crockett understood when she asked her question. It wasn't about winning a moment. It was about reclaiming a principle. The idea that no one, not even a justice of the Supreme Court, stands above the people's right to the truth. In that one exchange, she reminded America that the Constitution is not a shield for privilege. It's a promise of equality, one that demands vigilance from every generation. So, as the headlines fade and the political chatter moves on, that question remains, waiting to be answered. Not just by Clarence Thomas, but by every institution that claims to serve justice. And maybe, just maybe, this moment will become the spark that forces power to look in the mirror and remember who it truly serves. Stay tuned, stay aware, and stay truthful. This is Liberty Voice USA, where facts speak louder than politics.